When I first saw the picture of Obama that was unveiled yesterday at the Smithsonian, well, I took the bait, but not all of it. I looked at it like a lot of other people and said, my first reaction was, hey, that doesn't even really look like him. I mean, here's an early sketch by the same artist. I don't know if this was rejected or maybe Obama came back and said, let's do something else. But I didn't think it looked like Obama. If you look at those hands, first of all, the hands are huge. And second of all, they kind of look like working man's hands, a sharecropper's hands. And, well, let's just say those aren't the kind of hands you get skating through Harvard Law School. But the second day story, or the second hour story now, used to be second day stories are now second hour stories, really involved the artist's other works. One of them standing out in particular of a woman getting her head cut off and brandishing it proudly and defiantly. Well, that got a little more than a little attention. That's where a lot of us took the bait. I took the bait. I looked at it and said, what the hell is that? Well, that, of course, when you take the bait, that means we're doing exactly what the artist/provocateur wants us to do, because he has a little trap for those of us who do that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But first of all, when we talk about this painting, did it remind you of anything? The Obama portrait? The first thing it reminded me of was the statue of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Washington, D.C. You remember the statue they put out to the lowest bidder and they had it done in China, came back and people said, I'm sure that's a very great statue and I'm sure whoever that is, he really likes it, but it really doesn't look anything like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Didn't really matter. It's become kind of a shrine. And now we get the Obama thing coming out. People aren't really taking it that seriously. Nobody's looking at it and saying, yes, that looks like the President of the United States. A lot of people are poking fun with it. A couple of my favorites are this one of Homer Simpson. Another one, of course, is this one of Chris Christie sitting on the beach. Oh, man. There's a lot of funny people out there. Let's talk about the artist, this guy, Kehinde Wiley, for a bit. And so, this dude is famous, okay? All right, you just don't basically, it's not like he's got his art displayed on some kind of little storefront in Harlem and somebody discovered him. No, this dude is famous, and he has a shtick. He's famous, well, he's got some chops, no doubt about that, but his big shtick is taking these really famous portraits, famous works of art from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, including lots and lots of religious art, and putting contemporary black people in them. So we'll see pictures of, an old couple 400 years ago getting married. Flash forward to today, a couple of the fellas who are probably leading, as Kehinde Wiley does, an alternative sexual lifestyle. He doesn't hide that. He's proud of it. He's all good with it, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes he even refers himself to a gay Nigerian American, whatever that means. So anyway, that's his shtick. He paints the famous people of today, puts them in, famous and non-famous, and he puts them in these really classical settings. I mean, there's Michael Jackson. People say this is LL Cool J. I don't know. Maybe it is. It kind of looks like Ice-T to me, but as if I'm the person who would really know the difference when I'm not. But lots and lots. So, the guy has a huge body of work. He tours around a whole lot. And, his work is very well received. I kind of looked to see what the things were selling for. I didn't see that part. But I don't think they're cheap. He also does a lot of stained glass. And, people love that as well. But let's get to the one picture that's causing everybody a lot of heartache. It's this picture of the woman holding out a severed head, and the head is white, and she's holding a knife. The black woman holding a white person's head. That, of course, recalls the Kathy Griffin photo of just a few months ago, where she did that to Trump. But it's not. He wasn't really, when he did that. he wasn't really, he did that way before Kathy Griffin's thing. But that picture, when I looked at it, I said, that really looks familiar. What does that look like? First thing I thought of was maybe it's the John the Baptist. I mean, maybe it's the John the Baptist picture where he was, I don't know, he was in prison for some reason. And the guy's wife said, oh, well, John, I want his head on a platter. So they, cut his head off, put it on a platter. Lots of people have done paintings about that. But that wasn't what inspired that painting. Now, the one thing that a guy like Kehinde Wiley knows, especially if your art's going to be featured in these famous art, these industry standard publications like Arts in America, you not only have to be able to produce something that looks pleasing to the eye, they also have to have stories behind them. So we're going to hear his story in a minute. He tells us how he's empowering Black people by putting them in these situations and art and blah, blah, blah. So I knew there was a story behind that picture of the girl holding out the other woman's hair, the white girl's hair with a knife. Turns out it's from the Bible. And again, this is the provocateur part, right? It's like he's slyly putting this image out there for us to say, oh my God, that's the worst thing I've ever seen in my whole damn life. What is it? Why did Obama hire that person going around cutting off white people's heads? The image is from the Bible. It turns out it's a very common and a very famous image. It's the story of Judith. And the story of Judith is in the Old Testament. The Jews were going to war against King Nebuchadnezzar, I think his name was. And they weren't winning that war. I think the king's general maybe his name was Xenophanes. Anyway, so they it was like the night before the final battle, and that was going to be it. So Judith, who is described in the good book as a very beautiful widow, I don't know why the widow part's important, but that always comes up. Anyway, Judith, she's a Jewish woman that goes into the enemy camp. And somehow she's able to meet and seduce the enemy general Xenophanes. She gets him drunk. She takes him into his tent. They have intimate relations. He goes to sleep. And she cuts his head off. She's not done. She takes the head off, takes it back to the Israeli camp, the Jewish camp, and brandishes the head all around saying, hey, I just killed the general, which somehow re-energized the army. They attacked, and the Jews won that particular war against that particular general on that particular day. Hooray! But this has grown. This whole story of Judith is now a symbol of fighting against oppression. They're, a very famous contemporary version of it is a woman showing, I think, the head of either Stalin or Lenin. I forget which one it is, since I'm not looking at that picture now. But she's brandishing a picture of Lenin in kind of the same fashion and for the same reason. It's kind of like off with the head. Now, one of the things about I know I'm going to go right to the envelope of my expertise in art history, but when you copy or when you use as inspiration these old paintings, everybody, anybody who spends 10 minutes learning about these paintings knows that they're just lots and lots and lots of symbols in them, and every little thing, every little stroke, every little character, every little color, every little flower has a meaning. And so that's the big meaning of the Judith picture. So let's bring it forward. Let's bring it forward to today. I mean, this guy says he paints black and brown people. Okay, that's the CYA story. No, he paints almost exclusively black people. The only other white person, the only other white creature I've seen in any of his work is a little white cherub floating around the head of Michael Jackson, which, when you think about it, happens to be extremely weird. And so this black woman holding out a white head, I mean, that's not accidental. That's the story of Judith. And I think that's even what the painting is called. It's some kind of modern Judith. And I mean, that's a story of an oppressed, downtrodden person who's cut off the head of the oppressor, now is brandishing it about in order to inspire other people to rise up. That's the story of Judith. That's the story of that painting. I think somebody was telling me this morning, he read the article, I think it was in the Daily Caller today, and they quoted a piece from the New Yorker where this guy was talking about that piece a little while ago when it came out. I mean, this is like a famous piece that's very well received by all the white liberals who presumably would be very honored to have their face pictured as the one getting its head cut off. But I think the artist described it as, he said something like, well, no doubt there's a kill whitey ethic to it. You know what? Why don't we just listen to the artist talk about his own work in a much kinder and gentler version of what it actually is.
Imagine a world where the classic art pieces of the past are completely reimagined with a modern and diverse twist. Like this, the famous 1800 portrait of Napoleon crossing the Alps. It becomes this: bright colors, camouflage pants, and Timberland boots. Or this portrait of a couple from the 1600s becomes this: two modern young men in t-shirts and casual pants. It all springs from the vivid imagination of the popular American artist Kehinde Wiley, challenging the viewer to think deeply about the dynamics of power and race. And the world is taking note. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has awarded Wiley the Medal of Arts just this past January, and his studios are all over the globe, including one here in Brooklyn, and his latest exhibit is touring across the United States. Kehinde Wiley, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So of all those pictures, which are really amazing and fabulous, the one of Napoleon crossing the Alps just got me, because when I was a little girl, I had a book on horses, and guess what? That was in that book. Yeah. And here I see you making it into a modern masterpiece.
That's right.
What's your point? What's the objective of putting these, modern faces in this old art?
Well, indicating power, and it's been that way for hundreds of years. Artists have been very good at working for the church and for the state, communicating the aspirations of a society. What I choose to do is to take people who happen to look like me, black and brown people all over the world increasingly, and to allow them to occupy that field of power. You
famously say, and it's written about how you started, that one of the key turning points was finding a mugshot on the ground in LA where you grew up. And that created this whole sort of genre that you have developed. Tell me about the mugshot and where it's led you.
Right. It was a day in Harlem. I remember it like it was yesterday, walking down the street. And here's this crumpled piece of paper, and on it is a very sympathetic image of this young man, and it turns out to be a mugshot photo. And it got me thinking about mugshots, certainly, but also mugshots as a type of portraiture. What is portraiture? It's choice. It's the ability to position your body in the world for the world to celebrate you on your own terms. The mugshot, of course, removes all of that power, all of that control. And it got me also thinking about the role of an artist within a society. What can I do to start a broader conversation about presence and imminence and the desire to be seen as respected and beautiful in this world?
Yeah, I mistook. I said LA, but it was Harlem where you found it. But you've also said about this idea of young black people who get arrested and mug-shotted.
Yeah.
I know how they're boys, they're scared little boys oftentimes. I was one of them. I was completely afraid of the LAPD. So your history also obviously informs what you're doing and what you're trying to communicate.
This is something that cannot be taken for granted. The sense in which the humanity of the people in my paintings is what I'm about. I'm about looking at each of those perceived menacing black men that you see in the streets all over the place. People that you oftentimes will walk past without assuming that they have the same humanity, fears that we all do. There is nothing menacing when you happen to walk through the world in this body. I understand blackness from the inside out. What my goal is to allow the world to see the humanity that I know personally to be the truth.
And you've also said that, you are putting brown and black faces into a world of art that's only ever really had white faces. People have said that actually your work should startle. It should startle anyone, regardless of race, creed, or color.
Well, the world's a scary place. The role of an artist is to look at that world as it is and to imagine alternate possibilities, but also to heighten what actually is. What can I do as an artist that hasn't already been done before? Look closer. My job is to walk through the streets, find their own business, trying to get to work, stopping them. The next thing you know, they're hanging on a great museum throughout the world. And it allows us to slow down and to say yes to these people, yes to these experiences, yes to these stories.
And a lot of what you're showing also is these people, but wearing very hip clothes. You are not ashamed and shy of the brands. In fact, you celebrate the brands.
Right.
And even in a society, I mean, I remember, years ago in New York, people were getting killed and in fights for shearling jackets and for trainers.
That's right.
And yet you're celebrating that.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm looking at fashion as culture, fashion as serious business, where people will oftentimes dress themselves as a form of armor. Fashion is armor, and in so much as it says something about who we are in the world, it also protects us a bit. My work tries to concentrate on fashion as a conceptual color. It's yet another color in my palette to tell a story.
And these are huge paintings. I mean, I've even seen you on a horse, actually, doing the paintings. They're all over the United States. You also have studios all over the world. Are you surprised by this amazing success?
I am. Every day I count my blessings. There's something to be said about the courage to just throw yourself into this type of work. I never thought in a million years that I'd be here having the success that I do. But it says something great about America and about New York City, that you can have a dream like this, that you can put one foot in front of the other, and people will say yes to what you're up to.
And they have indeed. Kehinde Wiley, thank you so much for joining me here in the studio.
It's been my pleasure.
This guy might be the world's greatest artist. I don't even know. I mean, even if I were a gajillionaire, I don't think if I won that $500 million lottery, I don't think my first purchase would be to head down to Harlem to his gallery and to select one of his works. But he could be the world's greatest artist, but we don't know, because his appeal, the reason that his stuff gets so much attention is not because he's an artist, he's a black artist. And so he's kind of pigeonholed himself. Other people pigeonhole him. And you know what? If black people get pissed off about that, fine, they're entitled to. Well, they're not entitled to, because they're probably part of the whole pigeonholing thing, the affirmative action thing, where we can't just have an artist painting a picture of a president if he decides that his career is going to be all about the black thing. Then we're entitled to look at the black thing and go, okay, well, you're a black artist. Okay, that's why you got chosen to be that. Are you a great artist? Are you a world-class artist? I don't know. I don't know, because nobody ever gets past the black thing. That's not just art. That's in all endeavors. That's a necessary part of all these endeavors in the country, where there's affirmative action and special treatment and racial quotas and scores, extra scores for college admissions and extra scores for your business if you're trying to get a federal contract. I mean, it's hard to be both, right? I mean, you could be a great black business or a great business. You could be a great artist or a great black artist. He chose clearly, no matter what he says, he has chosen one thing over the other. So this whole racial identity politics, this is just another example of how this is seeping into every little nook and cranny of our life. And you can put a smiling face on it, but the racial identity politics is nothing but racial hostility, institutional racial resentment. And that's what we're seeing here. Has a smiling face. Hooray! They smile in your face all the time. They want to take your place. Yes, that's what the poet said. But I don't think that would make the black kids angry.